Hello and welcome to the show. So, with there being more and more regulations on what manufacturers can do with sort of powerful engines, it's quite common now to see various manufacturers using forced induction systems. Ford with their EcoBoost engine, this is like a 1 litre turbocharged engine that's much more economical while still being relatively powerful. They put it in on Mondeo, I think, and in a Formula Ford. Of course, also you have the likes of BMW. They took the M5, which had a V10 engine, and they downgraded it to or downsized it to a V8, but they put on 2 turbos, so it's quicker than it ever was. Which got us thinking, what is the best form of forced induction? Is it better to have a turbocharger, or is it better to have a supercharger? Now, a turbocharger is probably the more commonly used, shall we say. Now, a turbocharger works by taking the exhaust gases that are coming out of the engine and forcing it through a turbine. Turbine then spins very, very fast, about 250,000 RPM, which is incredibly fast and gets very, very hot. That then spins an impeller, which sort of pulls air through a compressor. Basically, it's very technical, but it pulls air into the engine, and the more air you can get into the engine, the more fuel you can use, and basically the more efficient and faster and more power you can get out of your engine. This is a very good example of a traditional turbo car. It's a Porsche 911 Turbo, and it works. It is a good way of gaining some extra power.
Now, on the other hand, you have a supercharger. Basically, it compresses air and also increases the pressure, temperature and the density and supplies it to a normal engine. This then allows it to have a greater mass of oxygen mixed with the fuel. Obviously, more oxygen with more fuel equals more work and more power for the engine. It isn't as efficient as a turbocharger, it doesn't give as much power, but there isn't any turbo lag, so you can get the maximum amount of power from it at all the times. It's either driven by a belt, gear or shaft, or it can be directly attached to the crankshaft to even more reliable.
Okay, so to sort of come to a conclusion as to which one is better, here we have 2 cars. I'm driving the orange Hyundai Genesis. Daniel, you're in the blue one. The blue Genesis is modified with a turbocharger, a race turbocharger. The orange one has got a race supercharger. And we're going to have a little race and see which one wins, I guess.
I'm siding on the turbos, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Slight turbo lag off the line, but
off the line, the supercharger is faster. I'm not sure whether it's to do with turbo lag or whether the turbo car, which does have quite a lot more horsepower, just sat there spinning its wheels, which is quite possible. Then, of course, it does get much.
Dear.
Where are you going?
I have no idea.
Did you forget where the corner was?
I didn't realise how bad the brakes were.
Yes, these cars. We should point out these cars have only been modified with the engine upgrades. We haven't touched any handling parts, so this is all about the engine. Of course, very quickly you caught up, and I kind of fell off the track a little bit. So you got into the lead, and it was very, very clear that the turbo is more powerful. But it's not really surprising. It's 50 PI higher. It had about 40, 50 more horsepower than the supercharger.
It did. It had quite a lot.
We're not really that surprised about it. Although there are some slight downsides to it, in that it is very powerful. As you can see, through some of the slower corners, it's a bit tricky to drive. Of course, the turbo won that, which isn't really particularly surprising. However, I then took the supercharged car and then went to modify it to make it the same PI as the turbo car. Now, this meant my car was even more powerful than the turbo, and I think it was then sort of 20 horsepower more. These cars are both putting out around 500 horsepower now. Off the line, you kind of lose that advantage because it just sat there wheel spinning, it was rubbish. We've got the hang of the first corner now. There was no
We did, yes.
Track.
I'm still a tad leery. The problem with this car is just you have a turbo, obviously. You upgrade the turbo, but generally with, obviously, cars in real life and most Forza cars, you have to upgrade other things as well, such as the brakes, the tyres and everything.
Yeah.
When you
the
just
brakes
upgrade
feel
the turbo...
like they're made out of newspaper at the moment. It's
They're
rubbish.
not brilliant.
These are really quite powerful cars now, which means that driving them is quite tricky. However, the supercharger is now keeping up just about. I wouldn't say it was faster. If I was building a car, well, first, don't just put engine parts in because it's mental and it doesn't work.
Start with handling.
But if you were building one of these cars to go racing, I would suggest the turbo. It was very close racing, as you can see here. We're having actually some really good battles. So there's some slight panel damage on the side of some of these cars, or both our cars, I think. It was a very good battle. However, the turbo is a little bit faster in a straight line, as you see here. We've both got a very similar exit, and the turbo is now pulling away on the straight. And then you're going to go and squeeze me out. There we go. Look at that. See, look, he's a dirty driver.
No,
the turbo is the faster of the 2 cars in this case. Although the supercharger means the Hyundai spits a lot of fire.
It did keep up with it quite well.
Yeah. The supercharger wasn't too bad. Now, of course, that is only 1 car. So here we have another 2. These are Corvette C4 Grand Sports, I think. Again, the supercharger one is the one closest to the wall this time. I forgot to paint mine orange because I'm an idiot. these have again been modified back up so they are both the same PI. This time around the Supercharger one was a little bit lower on power than the Turbocharger. I'm not quite sure, it's just to do with what the engine parts I put in, I guess. Off the line, that's more you missing the start than me getting a better launch.
I think I just had a bad start and didn't realise.
Yeah, I have to say actually, these Corvettes are really quite nice cars to drive. Getting a little bit off topic here.
I was surprised actually.
Yeah, the brakes were so much better than the Hyundais. I mean, these cars, these are about 550 horsepower, I think, roughly near enough between them. And you know, it's an American muscle car. We were not expecting these to handle quite as well as they did.
No, we weren't.
Okay, they're not brilliant, but the brakes were much better than the Hyundais. They are quite heavy though, as you will notice. The camera is following my car, the Supercharged one. I really should have painted this. Anyway, speed-wise, Supercharger was, I wouldn't say it was faster, but it was very, very close, much closer than the Hyundais. As again, you see, there is some close battling going on in this race.
It was definitely close. I mean, obviously we had learnt the track a bit more by now with, you know, sort of cars with a lot of power, not a lot of grip, but it was a lot closer. I think I still have just the edge on the straight for some reason. I don't know why, just the engine parts. Yeah, but it was actually surprisingly close. The turbo still seemed better around the corners because, just for whatever reason, but it was very close.
Yeah, it was a good race. I mean, there is going to become a little bit of driver skill in this. I'm not really a fan of the Nürburgring track, so I suspect Daniel is a little bit quicker driver around here. But yeah, these cars are very close. Fastest laps were within a few tenths of each other, I think, with these. As you can see here, the turbo car is going to win. I think I may have fallen off the track. There was a few sort of slight crashes, as you can tell by the damage on the car. we were racing really quite close though. So with the Corvettes, if you're building a Corvette, then it's kind of up to personal preference of what you want, because it really is just about the same. Now, we couldn't finish out a thorough test, so we have some Mazda Rx-8 R3s. There we go, that's a mouthful. And instead of a twin-screw supercharger, which I've been using the other two, this one here has a centrifugal supercharger. And these are also rotary engines that sound a bit like hairdryers. And so we're going to see how this compares. Now, one thing I should point out is the supercharger on this particular car, for the same PI, you can get 50 more horsepower out of the engine, which is quite a lot. I'm going off the track there.
You're going off
just
there.
Ignore me, sort of. I forget where the brakes are.
Doing what I did.
Cars don't brake very well either.
No, they don't. They're better handling.
The Supercharger is. They're a lovely handling car. They just don't stop, which is the problem we have with everything. But again, the Supercharger here is keeping up, and I have to say it is probably a little bit quicker. In fact, quite a little bit quicker, if I'm honest.
It is quite quicker, I have to admit. I mean, the turbo, if you put a turbo on this car, it's still a quick car, but as you can see here, the Supercharger is just pulling away. And I had quite a good exit. Alex was behind me about 25 foot, and he pulled away. There's a noticeable gap now, as opposed to the Chevrolet and the Hyundai. There wasn't that much of a gap, but there's a considerable noticeable difference in power and straight line speed.
Yeah, the Supercharger is obviously the option to go for if you're building one of these. I would say there is some very close racing again though. You could just about keep up. Now this, I don't know how you manage to do this. You get a tank slapper that goes on for like 300 meters, and then you're gonna fall off the track.
I managed to save it. I managed to save it.
Yeah, and then that pretty much opened the door for me to go on and take the win for the supercharged RX-8. And yeah, that pretty much summed up that race really. You were really struggling to keep up.
I was really trying to drive the car to keep up. I was pushing it on the limit of its grip, and it just wasn't. The Supercharger was quicker for the Mazda. Don't know why. It's just maybe because it's a rotary engine or something, or the sheer more power. But
we've got to kind of come to a conclusion, and really there is no clear-cut answer as to what is better. If you're building a car for a set PI, it's really just going to come down to experimentation. We can't recommend based on every single car. You're just going to have to play about with the parts and see which one is best. Turbo is normally the way most people go. I think we would safely say that that's probably more reliable to be a faster option. But to be honest, you just have a play around. Well, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any challenges you want to see us do, as ever, leave them in the comment section and we shall have a look through them. But yeah, until next time, goodbye.